Well, let's move on to our first big story of the day. Lord Frost, of course, is in Brussels responding to those new proposals to fix the Northern Ireland Protocol that we heard about that were published on Wednesday. Well, to dissect what this all means, I'm delighted to be joined by the former MP Stewart Jackson, of course, who was Special Advisor in the Department for exiting the European Union during so many of these fractious Brexit debates. And Stewart, I wanted to start this conversation. Welcome to the programme, by the way. I wanted
Morning,
to
Tom.
start this conversation off the back of an article you wrote in The Telegraph, pointing to some interesting solutions the EU has suddenly come up with to the Northern Ireland Protocol, many of which don't seem particularly new after all.
No, you're quite right there, Tom. And I mean, I think the fundamental issue here is that we were told by hardcore Remainers years ago, over many years, in fact, that the Northern Ireland Protocol could not be negotiated. It was set in stone. And in fact, what we've seen in the retreat, effectively, of the EU in the last few days is that the Northern Ireland Protocol, first of all, was never perfect, was always a flexible document and always open to renegotiation. But secondly, let's be honest, when the Remainers were crowing a year ago that effectively Boris had lied and said that there would not be a border in the Irish Sea and things could work better, they were proven wrong. In fact, the EU have supported his position. This was always really how Boris Johnson envisaged the Northern Ireland Protocol to work, and it's taken the EU a year to come up with these proposals. They're not perfect, but they are a start. There are bigger issues, of course, like the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice and issues like state aid and VAT rules, which are still problematic. But I think this is a good start, and it goes to the heart of a tough approach, a robust approach by Lord Frost, which was needed really right from the beginning.
I was a journalist who was covering all of this back in 2018 and 2019. There were so many new words that we all learned. It was maximum facilitation. It was technological solutions. At one point, it was even the Malthouse Compromise. Now, these are words, or at least some of them, maximum facilitation and technological solutions. These are words that are now being used by EU diplomats. So my question here is, when they said that all of this sort of stuff was impossible 2 years ago, they were just playing games, weren't they?
I think they were. I think they were relying on the weakness of the May government and how it was willing to compromise. They had actually got the UK in a very difficult position way back in 2017, because in 2017 we agreed the sequencing of the talks, which sounds a bit technical, but essentially they told us we had to sort out the Northern Ireland Protocol, citizens' rights and a financial settlement before they would even entertain the prospect of discussing a trade deal. And that happened during the course of the general election campaign in 2017. So it was a fait accompli. And that put us on the back foot from the beginning. And the rest is history. You know, many senior figures in the May government supported the EU when they called these proposals, which the European Research Group brought forward in September 2018, Tom, magical thinking. Well, it never was magical thinking, because trusted trader schemes, the use of data sharing, remote customs processes, all the things that the EU are now looking at in order to avoid there being effectively a border in the Irish Sea, were available to be used in 2018, and in fact had been used in the situation of the Swedish-Norwegian border. But they were not willing to look at it, and they wanted to weaponise the situation in Northern Ireland to effectively force the United Kingdom to remain in the EU customs union and parts of the single market. And it's only because Boris Johnson has got a strong political mandate and Lord Frost is tough and knows his stuff that they've now had to come back and compromise.
I remember back in that 2017 election, a lot of people were asking, particularly Brenda from Bristol, I think, was asking, why does she need to do it? Well, potentially, We've learnt over the last few years why having a big majority in Parliament is necessary when dealing with international opposition and international negotiations. Because, of course, you're so right when it comes to that sequencing. That agreement that was struck actually back in 2017 that required first the withdrawal agreement to be agreed and then, slightly confusingly, a year later, the actual trade and cooperation agreement to be agreed. It's why there were so many different signing ceremonies. We've got a deal. I thought we had a deal. We don't have a deal. No, they're different deals. It became all rather confusing for people watching, I'm sure. But moving this conversation on, has it really been the case that Boris Johnson's brinkmanship here, the ability to say, look, we're going to walk away, we're not going to fold, rather than some more light-touch diplomacy, potentially a bit more of a bombastic negotiating stance, has actually got us to this point where the EU is moving and moving significantly?
Yes, I think it has, because he is now stated quite categorically, and Lord Frost has repeated that the chance of triggering Article 16, which is effectively rip up the Northern Ireland Protocol, is not off the table, and that's very much an option. If the EU is not willing to compromise further, I think they need to. There's still a considerable hurdle of the fact that 1.8 million British citizens in Northern Ireland are subject to the fiat of a foreign court, which they have no control over and they cannot remove, i.e. the European Court of Justice. There are still issues that some people might, particularly the Unionists, see Northern Ireland as a de facto EU colony. And that is unacceptable. If you believe in sovereignty, in democracy, in self-determination, in independence, which is what Brexit's about, that cannot stand. The problem with the EU, of course, is they are whispering behind their hands that, if the British trigger Article 16 and end the protocol, then, we may even totally disable the trade treaty that we've struck with them, the TCA. The difficulty there is they themselves would have to put up trade barriers, physical border barriers at the border between the Republic and Northern Ireland. That's never going to happen. And of course, it would cause all manner of problems with defence, security, intelligence sharing, and cooperation with the EU. So that's off the table. So they are saying they're doing this for the people of Northern Ireland because the situation's untenable with sausages, with medicines, etc. The fact is, the big question in the air is, that was the same a year ago. Why did you pursue this aggressive, dogmatic policy? And Boris Johnson has forced you now to resile from that and be a bit more flexible. And to be honest, let's not be churlish, Tom, that we should applaud their efforts to reform the protocol, but I don't think it's gone far enough. And I think Frost needs to continue to be tough in the negotiations.
Well, he is in Brussels today. There is 1 month of negotiations, we're told, to go. I wonder if any of this would have happened at all if the EU hadn't been the first to move in terms of threatening to trigger Article 16 back in January this year, when they threatened to stop exports of vaccines getting to the UK. And triggering Article 16 was one threat that they made in terms of stopping vaccines that the UK had procured from getting into the UK. That really soured the relationship and started a chain of events that meant the protocol completely lost the consent of one community in Northern Ireland, did it not?
Yes, absolutely. And the consent mechanism is integral to the Northern Ireland Protocol. It's written into the treaty, and that leads into the consent mechanism for the Belfast Agreement and the Good Friday Agreement. The problem is that the EU has always misunderstood the politics and realities of Northern Ireland. It's not just about the Republic of Ireland's views or the nationalist community. It's also, Tom, about the Unionist consent both to the Northern Ireland Protocol and the Good Friday Agreement. But you're quite right. The big issue, of course, is that the EU is at a juncture where it's struggling. It's struggling with its own members, rule of law issues with Hungary and Poland. It's struggling with immigration issues. It's got a demographic time bomb, older people. It's slowing down as a proportion of world trade. It's reducing year on year. And it doesn't have the stomach for a massive fight with the fifth or sixth biggest economy in the world right on its doorstep. And therefore, it's been forced to concede that and come back to the negotiating table. And hopefully this will result in a long-term sustainable solution, including perhaps an independent arbitration panel which arbitrates between the European Court of Justice and the UK. I think that is doable, and I think Lord Frost and the EU both want to secure a long-term deal.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.